The cold November wind howled through the skeletal trees as Sarah pulled up to the remote farmhouse. The tires crunched against the gravel driveway, the sound swallowed by the vast emptiness around her. This was the family home where her ancestors had gathered for generations, and now, for the first time in years, she would be the host. The house loomed in the fading daylight, its wooden bones groaning as though warning her to turn back. But she shook off the unease. It was just an old house, her old house. Inside, she set the table with the antique silverware, the same set used for decades, their edges dulled by time. The fireplace crackled, sending flickering shadows up the walls, making the dimly lit room feel alive. One by one, her guests arrived. Her cousins, aunts, and uncles. Faces she hadn't seen in years, but ones she knew too well. They greeted each other stiffly, forced smiles masking old grudges. The air smelled of roasting turkey, stuffing, and something else. Something metallic. Dinner was set. The golden turkey sat at the center of the long table, its skin glistening under the chandelier's dim glow. Crystal glasses were filled with deep red wine, the color richer than usual. Sarah raised her glass. "To family," she said. The others echoed her words. "To family." They drank. The first sign that something was wrong came from Uncle Richard. He coughed, gripping his throat, his face paling. Then Aunt Linda followed, her fingers trembling as she clutched the tablecloth. A gurgling noise escaped her lips. Sarah's heart pounded. She hadn't touched her drink. Her hand was still wrapped around the stem of her glass, untouched. Around her, one by one, her family slumped forward. Their eyes widened in horror before glazing over. The silverware clattered to the floor, plates shattered, and then silence. The only sound left was the fire crackling in the hearth. Sarah stood, her breath unsteady. She turned slowly, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon her. From the shadows of the hallway, a figure emerged. An old woman. Her hair was stringy, her eyes sunken, her skin stretched too tightly over her bones. She wore an apron, stained with something dark, something that smelled like iron. Sarah's breath hitched. She knew this woman. It was her great-grandmother. But that was impossible. Great-grandma Esther had died decades ago. The old woman smiled, revealing blackened teeth. "You did well, child," she rasped. "The bloodline must be renewed." Sarah stumbled backward. "No. No, I didn't dash," a shrill laugh filled the room. "You've done your part. Now, it's time to feast." Sarah looked down at the table, at the turkey, at the meat on the plates. A realization clawed at her mind, one she didn't want to acknowledge. Her stomach churned. The candles flickered, the flames bending unnaturally, casting twisted shadows across the walls. A sound rose from the darkness: footsteps. More figures emerged. Dozens of them. Their faces were hollow, their skin sagging, their eyes black pits of hunger. They moved slowly, deliberately, towards the table. Sarah's breath quickened. The ghosts of her ancestors had returned for their meal. And she was the next course. The last thing she heard before the darkness swallowed her was the scraping of knives against plates and the whispered echo of a tradition never meant to be broken.